All right, let's get into it. Today, we are cracking open Chapter 4, Assessment of Children with Limited Language. And this is coming from the book Language Disorders from Infancy Through Adolescence. This whole chapter is basically about how clinicians have to become language detectives to figure out a kid's entire communication universe. So yeah, let's dive in. So let's just get this out of the way right off the bat. You gotta forget about some magic one-size-fits-all test that just spits out a perfect diagnosis. It doesn't exist. The source is super clear on this. The most powerful tool in this whole game is a sharp, well-trained human being. The clinician isn't just some technician running a test. They are the lead investigator on the case. So yeah, you gotta put on your detective hat. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, isn't just about finding what's wrong. No way. It's about building a complete 360-degree profile of a totally unique communicator. We're looking at their strengths, their challenges, how they play, how they interact. I mean, everything. We're trying to paint a full picture here, not just slap on some label. But think about it. Before any detective can spot a clue, they need to know what a normal scene is supposed to look like, right? So before we can even begin to understand what's different about a child's communication, we have to understand the basic blueprint for how it's built from the ground up. And the source material lays out this pretty incredible 5-step journey. It shows how a child literally goes from just banging toys around to actually being able to navigate a real back-and-forth conversation. Let's take a look at how this all builds. Okay, so check this out. What's so cool here is how each step just builds on the last one. You start as play partners. That's just figuring out what objects even do. Then you graduate to being turn-taking partners, learning that social stuff is a back-and-forth game. You know, like rolling a ball to someone and they rolled it back. From there, you become communication partners, using points and gestures to get your message across before you even have words. Only then do you become language partners, and finally, conversational partners, where you're mastering all those subtle social rules of a real chat. A good detective knows exactly where their subject is on this map. Okay, so this brings us to what is basically the first rule of this whole investigation. And trust me, it's a big one. You have to completely 100% ignore the kid's birthday. And this just illustrates the point perfectly. Knowing a kid is 4 years old tells you, well, it tells you almost nothing. Seriously. They could be a little linguistic genius or completely nonverbal. For our purposes, it's a pretty useless piece of data. The real clue, the thing that cracks the case wide open, is their language level. What can they actually do? Are they using gestures, single words? Are they starting to combine them? That is the evidence that actually matters. So, depending on that language level, our entire investigation takes a completely different turn. For a nonverbal kid, we're looking at the absolute foundations. How do they play? Are they even trying to communicate? With a single-word kid, we're zooming in on their early phonology, the first sounds they're making, and we're basically counting their vocabulary. And for a multi-word kid, we're getting into the nitty-gritty of early sentence structure, looking at stuff like semantic relations, which is really just a fancy way of saying how they're mashing words together to create meaning, like daddy shoe to mean, hey, that's daddy shoe. The profile dictates the whole line of questioning. Now, if this all sounds kinda straightforward, well, it's not. No good detective story is ever that simple. This is where the case gets really complicated, and honestly, this is what makes this work so damn tough. First off, no two cases are ever the same. You're dealing with a huge range of kids, some with cognitive impairments, some with autism, some with hearing loss. The source calls it an extremely heterogeneous population, which basically just means they're all incredibly different from each other. So any kind of cookie-cutter approach is just completely useless here. And then there's this. The severity of the issue is just all over the place. I mean, on one end of the spectrum, you might have a child who is completely nonverbal. And on the other end, you've got a kid who's a total chatterbox, but just mixes up a few grammar rules. The range of what you might see is absolutely massive. And finally, the thing we're actually investigating, language, is itself ridiculously complex. You've got meaning, grammar, sounds, social rules, all tangled up together. A problem in just one of those areas can ripple out and create chaos everywhere else. It's like trying to solve a crime where all the clues are connected in this giant invisible web. So with a case this complicated, what kind of tools does our detective actually use? What's in the bag? Well, it really boils down to a combination of high-tech lab analysis and just good old-fashioned street smarts. So this flowchart you're looking at here, this is like the official procedure. This is the textbook way to run an investigation. You can see it all laid out, from getting background info from the parents and doing standardized tests, all the way to evaluating the kid's environment. It's the clean, by-the-book process. But the real work, the magic, happens when you combine that official procedure with what we're calling street smarts. Standardized tests? They're like lab reports. They're great for answering one super simple question. Does this kid's performance differ from the average? It's a yes or no. But the real meat, the stuff that actually tells you the nature of the problem and what you can do about it, that comes from non-standardized methods. Just watching the kid play, interact with their parents, and just exist in their natural habitat. That's where the best clues are always found. And, a lot of the time, the most important clues, the smoking gun, if you will, they aren't words at all. You have to look way beyond what the child is saying and really focus on what they're doing. So a huge piece of evidence is what's called communicative intent. This is the why behind what a child does. Is that point just some random movement, or are they desperately trying to tell you, hey, look at that cool truck, or give me that cookie right now? See, before they have the words, they have the intent, and we have to figure out if they're trying to send a message, even if that message is totally silent. And according to the research, there are 4 predictors that are pure gold for this investigation. These are the most wanted clues. Babbling? Is it getting more complex, like baraga? That's a fantastic sign. Pragmatic functions? Are they using gestures to get things done, like pointing to the fridge for milk? Vocabulary comprehension. How many words do they actually get, even if they can't say them? And finally, symbolic play. Can they pretend a banana is a phone? If you see a kid doing that, you're literally seeing the foundation for abstract thought, which is critical for language. These 4 clues are incredibly powerful predictors of where a child's language is headed. So, the detective has gathered all the evidence. They've got the lab reports from the standardized tests, they've got the surveillance footage from the playground, the witness interviews with the parents, they've analyzed all the clues. So what's the final verdict? And here's the crucial point. The verdict is not language disorder guilty. That's not the goal at all. The goal of this entire painstaking investigation was to build a rich, detailed, 360-degree profile of that child's entire communication world. The verdict is a story. It's a description of their unique strengths and the specific support they need to thrive. And that really just leaves us with this one final thought. This whole process forces us to look beyond just the words a child says or doesn't say. It's a huge reminder that communication is so much bigger than that. So the question is, if we only ever focus on what we can hear, how much of the real story are we actually missing?